This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 531, What It Means to Be a Sales Engineer, with Jason Hadley.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today we take a pause from the Tao of Sales Babble. We start a conversation with Jason Hadley. Jason's a sales engineer at LightHouse Worldwide Solutions. He was a guest on my Cannabis Advocate podcast, which is another podcast I host. And Jason shared a lot of advice on prospecting, presentations, closing, and things like that when it comes to B2B sales. It was such a great conversation. I really wanted to share it here because it's refreshing. Talk to somebody who's actually a real sales guy in the trenches. He's the real deal. I come from B2B sales. It is near and dear to my heart. So I thought it was well worth the trouble to set Lao Tzu aside for just 1 week and get another perspective on the sales profession. Now, like I mentioned last week, I'm starting a new segment called The Good News, and listeners have been reporting in. Good news is an opportunity to share a success or maybe to recognize a coworker for some phenomenal work. And it's my chance to highlight sales babblers, listeners like you in the sales profession. So make sure and listen all the way to the end for the good news. And so with no further ado, let's get to Jason. Welcome, Jason. Are you ready to babble?
Let's do it.
Great. Jason, you guys reached out to me I think it was last week, wasn't it? You're a sales engineer at LightHouse Worldwide Solutions.
Yeah.
What website says here? You guys do microcontrol for cannabis grow rooms. How interesting is that? I mean, I've done some growing myself. That's a real issue, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, being able to get the final product across the finish line's part of the ability to make money at this game, right?
According to this here, you're also a sales engineer. You're like a sales rep, or are you an engineer that helps sales reps?
I'm more of a sales rep, but I provide an advisory role beyond just the transaction.
How so?
I mean, effectively working with them, not just it's not just about putting a magic box in a room. Like, you really kind of have to start to look at what are the sources of the problems that they're experiencing. Sometimes it's a problem with the building, problem with cultural practices. So I can kind of go in and take a look at that and make some advisements to help stop problems from even coming in to support what I do, on the product side.
Sales is a tough gig, isn't it? It went, and especially in the cannabis industry, because it's just fraught with issues. The fact that it's federally illegal, there's banking issues, taxes, transportation, advertising. There's a whole bunch of issues that come with that. As a sales professional, who exactly is your ideal client?
My ideal client is somebody who cares as much as I do. How you can't want something for someone more than they want it themselves. So part of what I have to do is effectively educate people on the problem. Mold is only 4 letters, but it has so much meaning to it. It has so,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gets into, it's a very deep dive subject. And, for a lot of guys, my biggest competitor is not the guy that sells the air filter across the street. I mean, it's change and discipline and, being able to adapt. Those are my things I battle the most with my clients.
I think that is a huge insight, that your greatest competitor is the status quo, not some other business. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are times where I get it. I sometimes I sound like a crazy person holding up a sign in the middle of Times Square saying, get ahead of your mold issues now. But yeah, I mean, you're starting to see that like you don't have to wait for things to become federally legal. The states are starting to get hip to putting federal regulations into their state guidelines. And, if you're not on top of that, an auditor doesn't have to go past the front office just to fine you out of business on records keeping.
Have you sold in industries other than cannabis?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Funny enough, I actually came from the advertising industry. So out of college, I got into business to business ad sales, and then ended up transitioning over to like a local, kind of what to do around town type of paper where you're selling ad space to like restaurants and movie theaters and stuff like that. And then it ended up getting bought out. I got laid off because I was the low man on the totem pole. And as I was collecting unemployment, a buddy of mine introduced me to a grower who got me set up for trimming. And, as a sales guy, you show up on time, you do a good job, you have follow through. Well, the bar's real low in cannabis around that. So I got fast tracked pretty tightly into like working at the grow. Then because I had a sales background, I ended up finding my way into cannabis sales, and it was just the blending of two worlds I enjoyed being in.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So what have you found is different in this industry versus selling ads?
Well, I can tell you that the people that you're dealing with, I mean, it's hard to sell slick to the people who invented it, right? So you have to be your most authentic self. And my most authentic self is somebody who wants to see people succeed. So for me, it's like a pretty easy transition. And, as you can tell, I can gab. So, it's like, I love talking about the problem and educating people around the problem, because then it makes the solution a lot easier to discuss, but yeah, it just comes from just care, honestly.
Where do you see salespeople screwing up in this industry?
Honestly, I think it's about not following through, like lack of follow through. Oh, I'll get you something by X date and it doesn't happen, or not, not showing up to meetings on time. Just because the cannabis industry runs 15 minutes behind doesn't mean you get to. As a sales guy, I'm 10 to 15 minutes early to my appointments, gather your materials, meditate for a moment, whatever your pre-appointment ritual is, I mean, I don't know, like, you got to kind of, sometimes it's about being the adult in the room.
I like that. I say that too.
Yeah.
At times. What does that mean for you to be the adult in the room?
That means that I'm not financially or emotionally connected to the place that I'm doing business with, other than the fact that I want to help them with the products I sell them and advise them around the things that I know. Right. But sometimes that means like having to have frank discussions and break it to people. Like, for instance, cultivators are very married to their process. Right. They have their formulas, they have their preferred grow media. And in some cases I have to advise them, like, your lab tests are showing that you test hot for all of these different microbes, and the cocoa you're growing in tests hot for all of these microbes. Might you want to consider reducing the risk of switching to an inert media? Something where you're not bringing problems in. And that's a tough discussion to have with people, but I can lead that horse to water. It's up to them to drink, right?
What makes that difficult? Why is that a tough conversation for them?
I think, because I think that the average cannabis cultivation director, business owner, it's a skeptical industry. They're very skeptical, and rightfully so, because in this industry, there's a lot of like what you might call snake oil, or there are things that maybe are carried over from other industries that might not necessarily be a one-to-one fit for cannabis. And so they don't kind of meet their claims. in the context of cannabis. So you get a lot of guys that are burnt, and plus like most of these guys came from the gray market. So, they have a natural contempt for authority and law enforcement and stuff like that. So, you're kind of, I say it like this, compared to advertising sales, when it was business to business advertising sales, you'd be like in a suit or you'd be in a polo and Dockers, and shorts is overdressed for this industry. You know what I mean? Like, so it's the difference between like, business to business and working a Turkish market bazaar style of sale. So there's haggling involved, and there's, refuting claims and in a way that, I'm not a guy that likes to knock my competitors. That's something you also see in sales out here in the cannabis industry. It, just for what it's worth, is like somebody gets on like team product, whatever that product is, they get loyal to it. They get the hats, they get the shirts or whatever. There's a huge amount of tribalism in people who, like follow their preferred vendors.
That's actually an amazing space to be once you've earned that,
right?
The client, right? That they're loyal to you and they're not willing to even look at anybody else. Mm-hmm. Because somehow or other you've delighted them so well. You provide them such great products or services.
Oh yeah. It brings in referral business all the time.
No way I'm ever leaving Jason. He's my guy. He's my man.
Yeah. Right. Now, here's the thing though. That's a double-edged sword, because as quick as you rise, you can fall just as fast, because the other kind of interesting part of dealing with cannabis growers is that if they're not happy, they can get loud really quick. And with social media, I've seen it with other like companies where some disgruntled customer is like putting a company on blast all over social media. And, so it's like, fly right, man, follow through on stuff, act like, at least care, come from a place of care, that's all there is to it. Everything else will guide itself. But yeah, customers that aren't happy don't necessarily follow the same channels that you see in like business to business environments, where they can like quote formally lodge a complaint or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get that.
I want to circle back though to client acquisition.
Sure.
If possible here. So, so you had mentioned this before, that looking at some of the reports, you see that their products are popping hot for molds and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Yet you have solutions that can help that. Yet they are skeptical. My guess is, correct me if you're wrong, in my experience, what I've found that people often make decisions on feelings and then kind of rationalize them with logic afterwards. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming the kind of logic that you're promoting are KPIs like quality, growing profit margins or growing revenue or something like that. Like,
sure.
How do you approach that?
Yeah, I get it. Because I sell a solution to a problem they can't see with the naked eye. So I might as well be telling them that their facility's haunted. And it's the same reaction. Like, they have no concept of it. They haven't seen a ghost. So why would they think that the place is haunted? Right. So,
but isn't it like powdery mildew, or what's that hop variant?
Yeah. Okay. So
just stuff like all over the place, right?
Right. Well, to differentiate, I sometimes I get calls from people who are in the middle of problems. So that part, makes it a lot easier, because I'm helping them through a solution that they're currently in the midst of trying to devise. But then there's the other people that are like preventative people, and they're calling ahead of a build, or they're calling because they know they have a need for something, but they're kind of sussing out all the companies. So, one of the advantages I think we have at LightHouse is we make clean room monitoring equipment. So we make things like particle counters and air samplers. And so part of what I do on a site visit is show them the problem. that they can't see with the naked eye, that the instrumentation can pick up. So I'll walk around the facility with a particle counter and I'll show them, hey, you realize you have more particles in your air in flower room 1 than you do in your lobby. That's concerning. With the air samplers, you can take air onto a petri dish, send it to a lab, and that comes back and they culture it out. And now you start to know what's really in your air. And it's like, I don't make this stuff up. I'd say I don't pull it out of the air, but I totally pull it out of the air, but they can't see it as they're walking through their space. So sometimes there's a little bit of an unintended scare tactic that I have to play kind of delicately, honestly.
I'm assuming that shows up in their yield eventually somehow, right?
Sure.
And that goes right to their bottom line, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, products that can't cross the finish line can't be on a shelf.
Yep.
But the dirty secret is, I'm sure there's plenty of companies that are diverting, product out the back door, to other sources, because this industry came from, the shadows. They're not afraid to put their license at risk. At least in some cases, which is a shame. It's like, why go through all that? Some lab coats and booties could slow a lot of that process down,
Interesting.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, so that's where, when I have to tell them that they're, it's like, how do you tell a parent that their baby's ugly,
It's, and what's the word you use? Delicate? It's a delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to say, listen, here's the thing, you're testing positive for this volume of particles and these types of molds are found in your air. They can eventually make their way to your plants. They make their way to the plants. You don't pass your compliance test. You don't pass your compliance test. You can't sell the product. In some cases, it's immediately seized and destroyed, and now you're out all that time, money, labor, supplies, resources. It's like,
What I love what you're doing here is, and I think what makes you a great salesman, Jason, is that I'm getting the sense you genuinely want to help these people grow their businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's an authentic. This is authentic for you, isn't it?
Oh, sure. For one, I like seeing people succeed. I've just kind of naturally in life been the guy that's been like the Bernie Topham to the Elton John. You know what I mean? Like Elton, he gets all the shine. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I've very much been the Bernie Topham of life,
Or the Colonel Parker to Elvis.
Right. Exactly.
He stole all of Elvis' money. Well, really? Did he? Because I don't think Elvis would even have been without Colonel Parker.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Without the suitcase full of drugs. Yeah.
Whoa. We're talking about cannabis here, right? Isn't that a drug? At least.
Yeah, well, no, it travels in the back of a van. We're talking big yields here. Come on now.
Yeah, we're kidding here. Let's just. I'd like to talk a little bit about client acquisition.
Sure.
How do you find your leads?
Number of ways. Find them. I go to trade shows. I'm meeting people at live events, and I am scouring LinkedIn and Instagram. Instagram seems to be a huge one for me, honestly.
That's interesting. And how do you reach out to them? What's your tricks?
Yeah, sometimes it's as simple as just sending them a direct message and introducing myself. Hey, I'm Jason Hadley with Filter and LightHouse. I do microbe control, blibbity blobbity blue. I can help you guys out. If you have any problems, I'm always available for questions. And, invariably, as, sales statistics go, some don't get back to you, some do, and some lead to conversations, and some of those lead to sales.
Yeah. What's an example? You don't have to name names here, okay?
Sure.
What's an example of a client that that had a problem, you were able to help, and they saw positive results from that since, hiring, using LightHouse Worldwide, one of your products.
Yeah. No, I think where to begin?
Just one. One.
Yeah, fair. I understand. No, I mean, but yeah, I have a client here local to me in Michigan, and they were continually, they were failing intermittently, and they couldn't seem to figure out what the solution was. They didn't even know where to begin asking questions. And so I came by, I did a product demo. I showed them some of the things that are going on in the room outside of the equipment and changes they could make just right after I left. And, from there, after showing them the problem, they took it back to their leadership team, and the leadership team, saw the value in what we do. I mean, the nice part about what I sell as a air purifier is I can literally take a particle counter and put it on the bottom of the unit. And then I can take that particle counter and put it on the top of the unit. And I can demonstrate that I actually do my job in real time in the room in front of everybody.
Wow.
That is one of the things I absolutely 100% love about what I do is, I sold lighting before I got into with LightHouse and Filter. And, a client wants to test out a light. Okay, cool. You're testing out a light, but like all the other things have to go perfectly right in that process for the light to be testable. You know what I mean? Like if they had a power outage for 3 days and the crop didn't come out right, or, like somebody mixed some chemicals wrong and it poisoned the plants that happened to be under that light. It's like, there's no way to really tell efficacy. There's no way to prove what you do. And because, going back to, the type of customer I deal with, the skeptical customer, if I can show them what I do in real time, I acquire my clients a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Because they see it. That's, these are, my clients are people who, have politics that, personal politics that are on wild ends of spectrums. Some of them kind of maybe wear a little tinfoil hat now and again. They're not trusted. They're in an industry. Seriously,
they're conspiracy theorists. Yeah,
you scroll through these posts, and like when they're not posting shots of their plants, they're kind of letting you into like the insight of their life. Like what they think and what they believe and what they do. I pay attention to those posts on their accounts too. Like I want to know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I never bring up, religion or politics in a sales environment anyway, just as a general rule, but I at least want to do some intel on who I'm working with and be able to tailor to them.
What about, so you help these people out and they immediately saw that your filter was filtering.
Yeah.
Are you able to get recommendations and referrals from your existing clients?
Absolutely. Happens all the time. Hey, I want you to talk to my buddy. It's funny, and sometimes it actually works in the opposite. Cause I've approached a few, like I go back to my clients and I go, hey, if you're liking the service, you're liking the product, let me know who else in your world I can help out. And, in some cases they invariably toss me a couple of names or they set up an introduction or something like that. But then there's some of them, honestly, that are like, I don't tell anybody about you and I don't want anybody to know about you because they're my competitors. And I want to be able to outgrow them.
Well, that's kind of a compliment too, isn't it?
Absolutely. I will take that compliment. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, I have to, unfortunately, it's kind of a sad trombone for me because, that's like pretty much, unless they open up a new facility, that's kind of most of the business I'm going to get out of them. But at the same time, I mean, like, you got to respect their hustle.
You do indeed. Maybe you could tell the audience if people want to two things. If people want to reach out and meet you,
mm-hmm.
Maybe they got a question for you, something that's burning, something I didn't ask. What's the best way of doing that?
Because I'm not to show my age, but I hate social media. But I will say though that I do keep maintain an Instagram and a LinkedIn. So if you wanted to reach me on the Instagram, I'd be under Dyslexic Stoner 402. If you wanted to reach me on the LinkedIn, I'm under Jason Hadley with LightHouse. And of course, we got the websites for the products themselves, filterscience.com. I'm the guy at the end of the sales inquiry. So if you fill out the contact form, that email goes to me.
So filterscience.com, is that the way to get to LightHouse Worldwide? Or maybe explain how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so LightHouse is the parent company. They're www.golighthouse.com. And then Filter is sort of the company within the company. And so we have a dedicated website for that, filterscience.com, FILTR science.com.
I'll make sure and put those in the show notes. That way people can follow up on them. This has been a really good conversation.
I appreciate it.
Because sales is something people are afraid of many times. They're experts in, say, in your case here, they're cultivators, right? That's their expertise.
Right.
And I think you've really given some really great insight and advice here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I love this industry for it, for like all of its, in other words, like, as far as industries are concerned, like right about now, like I kind of consider cannabis to be like the bad news bears of big businesses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You gotta love them, and that you can feel the fight of the industry as a whole. And eventually they'll get there, but we're just kind of going through some growing pains right now, as any other emerging industry is.
Yep. Well, nevertheless, Jason, thank you very much for coming and visiting the podcast. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much, Pat.
Now it's time for some good news. Good news is a new segment that I've added to Sales Babble. It's a place where listeners share and highlight the good news they have this week, and listeners have been reporting in. And good news could be anything: a successful initiative, maybe some deal you've got that was very difficult to close, maybe an award or a promotion, or maybe just completed some certification or a degree, or maybe you want to recognize somebody, a coworker who's done a phenomenal job. I urge you to share good news, and I'll highlight it here on the podcast. Now, you can share your name and your business, or you can remain anonymous. I've had people do it both ways. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't need any details about any one deal. I don't want to steal any intellectual property or take away anybody's privacy. What's important is the recognition and your success. So before I share some good news, how do we do this? It's easy. Go to salesbabble.com. On the top, there's a button for good news, or you can click on the Babble Me button, which has been on the website since its very beginning. Or you can message me on LinkedIn or email me at pathelmers@salesbabble.com, whatever's easier. Share your success, and we'll congratulate your good news. Our first good news comes from Dave Moravik. Dave has been on this podcast, and he says, quote, "I'm excited to share that in addition to our 4 local book signing events in Cincinnati for Echoes Across the Tracks, I scheduled a short book signing tour in Effingham, Mattoon, Kankakee, and Brookfield, Illinois on June 27th through the 29th. Hey, congratulations, Dave, on your book. I have completed the book. I have finished the book. It is a great read. Highly recommend it. Go back into episode 525. That was about 2 months ago. Congratulations, Dave. Next, I got some good news from somebody who's anonymous who said, quote, "I've been waking up in the mornings feeling good due to eating healthy and exercising. I feel as though I'm thriving because of it." Oh, that is great. I'm a morning person myself, and I really believe if you get things set right in the morning, and I have a whole bunch of processes and steps for that it can make the whole day go right. So great to hear that. Lastly, I have some good news I want to share. This month I drove to Ohio to attend a high school commencement for my nephew Aiden Hoppy, and I don't know about you folks, but it never ceases to amaze me that you can see somebody go from a baby to an adult with so much opportunity ahead, and to see that whole thing. So I really want to congratulate Aiden on some great work, and I'm excited for him going to school, going to college, and again, congratulations on his high school event. While listening to the speeches, I doubted that some of the wisdom shared is going to be remembered by the grads. But it struck me that the speech is just not for them, but for all the audience. Because I've heard those speeches year after year, but it's a message that bears repeating. And some of the things that I heard was that from this moment forth, you have a great opportunity, and it's for you to decide how to use it. That we should pursue our passions, embrace lifelong learning, build a strong network of friends and family, and to take care of our well-being, knowing that you can't control what people do to you, but you can control how you respond. These are things to reflect on every so often and to remember, to put back together forgotten advice, yet forever true. I think there's something for all of us to be heard in these commencement speeches. So if you get a chance to hear one of them in the next few weeks, reflect on that. With that said, again, congratulations, Aiden, for a job well done. Now, to connect with Jason Hadley and LightHouse Worldwide Solutions, you can find links in the show notes at salesbabble.com. And while you're there, you can sign up for our brief weekly newsletter with links to the podcast sent conveniently to your inbox. And if you found value in today's episode, make sure and share this episode with a friend who may also be interested in growing their selling skills, because word of mouth is the premier way of growing our sales community. With that said, that's all I've got for today. Until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.